So I just binged the Halo Infinite campaign within about 3 days. Understandably, this isn't as uncommon for story-driven games because that's all you get. Anyway, here I was going through the endgame credits ready to read up on the game's reception. I have this habit of checking reviews after I complete a game so that the review doesn't influence my opinion, also so I go in knowing as little about the game as possible. Yeah, I'm one of those guys that looks at reviews, leave me alone. I popped out IGN's review to start off with, and I was left scratching my head. I was getting schooled about the game I had just played. It's not like the review was mentioning missable secrets, it was mentioning some important mechanics and story points. For example, this boss battle, which was hell to complete, was only hell because I was unaware of the strategy, which now seems painfully obvious. Up until that point, I had just branded it as a poorly designed boss battle, and I wouldn't have known had I had not looked up IGN's review. So what the problem is that I was skipping tutorials? That's the thing, I had read every tutorial that popped up and I knew what that ability did, yet somehow it didn't occur to me. As for the story, to be fair, I wasn't following the series' story in depth, but there were still story points that I shouldn't have missed. However, throughout my playthrough I was paying attention, and by the end was convinced I had experienced a game that 343 had intended to be experienced. But I was wrong. So what had happened? I'm sure at this point you guys know where I'm going with this. I had rushed the game. Research suggests for optimal performance we should spend between 20 to 50 minutes on a task. Beyond that and our attention begins to diminish. Now of course playing video games is a far less mentally challenging task than say solving equations, but here's the thing, video games now have a level of depth that puts games of the past to shame. You need a different level of attention for Pac-Man than for Halo Infinite. To me, binging games is like soaking a sponge with water, but you keep pouring more water on top of that. There's just so much information we're designed to efficiently process in a given time. By the time I had watched the reviews, I felt as though I couldn't really say I had experienced Halo Infinite as intended, though binging games is a feeling I'm all too familiar with, because it's rooted in the very medium itself. I understand getting excited over a game that you've been anticipating for months, maybe even years, but let me put it like this. You've likely been following every bit of news around this game, from trailers, the story, gameplay, and even sometimes reading up on fan theories to keep you hyped, all to play it maybe for several days and never touch it again? So that when you try to recall it in the future, it's a blurry memory that had no long-lasting impact? Games have a typical development cycle of several years. That's years of hundreds of minds working on a game and constantly adding to it, and in my opinion, a few days just doesn't cut it to fully appreciate that. This is why I've decided from here on I'll take as much time as necessary to complete a game, and you should too. I challenge you, next time you pick up a game you've been anticipating, in fact any game for that matter, take your time. Take your time with it and then see how differently you experienced it from if you had binged it, how well you understood the story, how much you engaged with the game's mechanics, what creative strategies did you come up with to clear that pesky level. Importantly, how much of that game did you leave with after rolling through the credits. Thanks for taking the time to watch this video. I've now returned to YouTube after a long break. I plan to experiment with my content for a while to get a feel for the format. Please feel free to leave any thoughts in the comments below, where I'd love to talk to you guys. Take care.